I'm Ingrid. I'm 30 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my parents threw me a birthday party to publicly disown me in front of 53 relatives at the nicest restaurant in town. A private room at the Sterling, white tablecloths, and crystal chandeliers. The same place where they once celebrated my sister Meredith's medical school acceptance like it was a royal coronation. I walked in thinking it was a surprise celebration and instead found a courtroom with a microphone, a lawyer holding a notary stamp, and a single empty chair placed in the center like I was the defendant in a trial I didn't know I was facing. A month earlier, my mother, Victoria, had called me out of nowhere while I was elbow deep in clay at my pottery studio, her voice sweet in a way that immediately felt wrong, inviting me to a family dinner for my birthday, something she had never once done in 30 years. And 2 days later, Meredith showed up unannounced to talk about Grandma Rosemary Harmon's beach house, the house Grandma left to me in her will, suggesting I sell it to bail out her struggling clinic because the family needs it, as if family only meant them and their ambitions. When I refused, the pressure began. Texts from cousins assuming I'd already agreed, my father warning me that wills could be contested and that loyalty shouldn't need legal enforcement, subtle threats wrapped in disappointment. The night before the dinner, I finally opened a wooden box Grandma had left me and found a letter and an old photograph of my mother standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. And though I didn't read the letter fully then, I felt in my bones that Grandma knew something I didn't. At the Sterling, when my father stood and announced that they were disowning me for choosing an embarrassing artistic life over a respectable medical career, murmurs of agreement circling the room, my mother slid a document toward me, voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights to the beach house, and told me to sign in front of everyone so I could leave with dignity. It was never about shame or family values. It was about property, about leveraging public humiliation to force my compliance, about using 53 relatives as pressure points. My hands shook, but instead of signing, I asked for the microphone, and just as I was about to speak, the woman from the photograph, my Aunt Patricia, the sister my mother had erased from our family 20 years earlier, stood from the corner and revealed why she was there. Grandma had anticipated this, had asked her to attend if Victoria ever tried to coerce me, and had given her access to a voice recording taken in her own home months before she died. Patricia pressed play, and the room filled with my mother's voice calmly outlining the plan to stage an intervention at my birthday, maximize witnesses, provoke a meltdown to paint me unstable, and contest the will, with my father and Meredith contributing as if they were discussing a marketing strategy rather than their daughter's life. The silence afterwards was suffocating. Relatives who had nodded along moments earlier now stared at my parents in disbelief. The lawyer quietly packed away his notary stamp, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the problem in the room. I took the microphone and read the rest of Grandma's letter, in which she warned me that Victoria saw people as tools, that the house was proof someone loved me without condition, and that if I was reading her words at a family gathering, then events had unfolded exactly as she feared. I told them I would not sign, that any document obtained under duress would be void under the protective clause in the will, and that if anyone tried to contest it through manipulation, they would forfeit their own inheritance. Then I said something I had never dared to say before. If they wanted to disown me, consider it done, but on my terms, not theirs. I walked out into the night expecting to be alone and instead found 3 younger cousins, Emma, Tyler, and Lily, waiting to join me, saying they didn't want to stay inside that cruelty. And over coffee and pie at a diner 2 blocks away, I realized that family can fracture and still leave something better in its place. The fallout was swift. Investments were pulled from Meredith's clinic, church friends distanced themselves from my mother, whispers spread about the birthday intervention, and for the first time, Victoria's carefully curated image cracked. Meredith called to blame me for her collapsing finances. My father withdrew into embarrassed silence, and my mother eventually phoned to offer conditional reconciliation if I signed over the house. But by then, I understood the pattern: love as transaction, approval as currency, and I declined without anger, simply stating that I didn't need their will, their money, or a place in a family that required my diminishment. I began spending weekends at Grandma's beach house, teaching pottery classes on the deck overlooking the ocean, Patricia joining us for Sunday dinners, my younger cousins dropping by to learn how to center clay on a wheel. And in that small, imperfect circle, I felt something I had chased for 30 decades: belonging without performance. I stopped mourning the fantasy of the parents I wished I'd had and started building the family I chose, one based not on blood or reputation, but on honesty and mutual respect. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but it transformed into clarity, into boundaries that were neither revenge nor bitterness, but simple declarations of self-worth. On my 30th birthday, my parents tried to make me small in front of 53 witnesses, convinced that shame would bend me into compliance. Yet their own recording exposed the truth and freed me from the exhausting project of earning love that was never offered in good faith. They thought they were staging my humiliation, but they handed me my turning point instead. Now, when I stand on that deck at sunset, salt air in my lungs, clay drying beneath my nails, I understand what Grandma meant when she wrote that she left me more than a house. She left me the truth, and with it, the courage to say no. I lost the illusion of unconditional parental love that night, but I gained autonomy, chosen family, and the steady knowledge that I am allowed to exist without shrinking. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't property, but permission to live fully. And sometimes the best revenge isn't retaliation, but a life built openly, creatively, and unapologetically on your own terms.